And there's somebody listening right now who feels the same way, who feels like the world is just beating me up. I am resilient. I do have grit. I'm not giving up, but the world won't stop. And that's where I was. It just kept coming and kept coming. And no matter how much I thought I was trying to fix a problem, but the only thing that we can truly control is ourselves and how we show up. So when we think, are we thinking and producing clarity? That's the first step in what I call the mentally strong method.
I am mentally strong, learn it, live it, level up, regardless what life brings.
Mentally strong.
I will live mentally strong.
Mentally strong people have grit, but that might not mean what you think it means, right? There's a famous TED Talk about what is grit and do we have grit? But mental strength and grit are not the same thing. Grit is your ability to push through. Mental strength is your ability to know your capacity and grow your capacity, right? Because we can have all the grit in the world, but if we just keep pushing through, we're basically in survival mode. You are just surviving. You're not living, you're not growing in your capacity. So yes, grit is amazing. Mentally strong people do have grit, but it is a component, one characteristic, one skill in your mental strength journey. So what is that skill? What is grit? Grit is that ability to never give up. And if you are listening right now and you're feeling overwhelmed and you even have that mindset of, I want to give up, don't. Hold on to grit, because mentally strong people have grit. But we also all have a capacity limit. And this is what's not taught, right? We all know that we should have more grit, but then when we reach that ceiling, that capacity limit, our nervous system is not able to handle the next thing. Then the grit fails us, right? I'm Dr. B. I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner with over 25 years of clinical experience, a doctorate in healthcare education. I love teaching around mental health, mental strength, but my real strength comes from having to live mentally strong. You see, I've lost 3 children and my husband over the course of 20 years. And a lot of people think, oh, well, then you're a grief expert. No, I'm a mental strength expert. Grief is my story. Grief and trauma are my story. But what I've been able to do with that story, that enormous pain that I've been through, I've been able to figure out how. How do you actually grow in your capacity? I want you to think right now. If something horrible happened, would you have the knowledge, the skill, the capacity, the grit, the resilience, all of the skills, the bravery that mentally strong people have? Would you have enough of it to confidently say you could handle whatever the outcome? And that is a really difficult place to be. Like, people hear my story and they're like, no, if I lost a child, I'd be done. And I can tell you, I've been there. I understand that feeling. But I also figured out the how. And so when we talk about grit, right? And this is, when on my channel, I talk about what is mental strength. Grit is one of those things that you need to find in yourself, no matter what is going on in your life right now. I want you to figure out how to not give up. That's grit. Okay? But it is not just a grin and bear it and survive and hold your breath and hope that it all goes away. That's not mental strength. When I say mental strength is the ability to increase capacity, that it is not just capacity for the next bad thing, it is capacity for joy and love and happiness, purpose, the things that we want to live through, right? And so, what is mental strength? Because when you think about grit, I want you to have grit wherever you are right now in your life. I want you to not give up. But part of that not giving up is taking a step back and learning how to actually be mentally strong. So I can tell you my story. I said that I lost 3 children over the course of 20 years. My first loss was my son, Johnny. He died in a drowning accident, completely unexpected. Obviously, we were on a family vacation enjoying the river in Kentucky. And he was a city boy and he knew how to swim in a pool, but he did not really understand swimming in a river. And as he was swimming across the river, he began to struggle. And I was not there. But from the stories I heard, the struggle was very short. And then he went under and never came up. Now, at that point in my life, that was 2005, I used all the grit that I could find and I pushed through. I didn't do what I teach now. I had 6 other children at home that needed me. And I knew that I had to show up for them. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about my mental capacity. I had to push through. That was the narrative. That was what I was saying in my brain. And I did it. I pushed through with grit. But life didn't get easier. Shortly after Johnny's death, my son Reggie began to have catastrophic epilepsy. The doctors couldn't figure out why. They just kept saying, well, some kids have epilepsy, but he would not respond to any treatment. And so I spent the next 5 years just going around the world looking for both alternative medicine doctors, traditional medicine doctors. Somebody's got to be able to stop these seizures in my son. And then we found out what it was. It's a rare neurodegenerative condition that is genetic. They tested the whole family. My other daughter, Maya, my husband have this rare neurodegenerative condition. At the same time, I had teenage daughters who were manifesting their previous trauma and losing their brother and began things like running away and things that scare any mother. And although I had all the grit, I was proud of how resilient and how I could find grit and how I would never give up on my kids and finding healing and treatment and all of these things. I hit a capacity limit because our body, our mind, and our nervous system, everybody has a capacity limit. And I hit mine. And this was in the midst of my son having catastrophic epilepsy, in and out of the hospital, kids running away, never grieving the loss of Johnny. Realizing that my other daughter and my husband have this disorder. That was my capacity limit. And I began to realize that all of my education, and I've also been on a self-development journey. I've read all the books, right? I incorporate all the things. And nothing was enough. I had hit my limit. And that is where the Mentally Strong method began. Now, it took me 10 years to actually get what I now call the Mentally Strong method in writing. This is what true mental strength is, right? It is, can you think through your problems? Can you organize them? And can you make decisions in line with what you want? This is in the midst of truly deeply emotional problems. Having a sick child, children running away, that is deeply emotional traumas. And so when you think about what is true mental strength, I knew I wanted to figure it out, but I also knew I was at my capacity limit. And I would love to be able to teach this to you. If you click the link in the description, you can learn about how to work with me directly because I teach mental strength to high performers. I teach mental strength to people who have grit and resilience, but we all have a capacity limit. And I would love to teach you before you reach that capacity. But obviously, if you reach that capacity, I can also help. So, what is mental strength? What have I learned over the last 15 years? I learned that when we think, we are often just ruminating. We're not actually producing clarity. So, real thinking that produces mental strength, produces clarity. So, you think through something, and as you're thinking through it, you're becoming more clear. You know, have you ever like sat in your room and thought, these are my problems. I'm thinking this, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking this. And you just feel worse because you don't actually produce clarity. And you can imagine I'm in a situation where it's not about a choice that's going to change my situation. I mean, I hoped so, right? I often would find the next doctor and go and try the next treatment and really believe that this was the choice that was going to heal my son. But over and over again, I was disappointed. And there's somebody listening right now who feels the same way, who feels like the world is just beating me up. I am resilient. I do have grit. I'm not giving up, but the world won't stop. And that's where I was. It just kept coming and kept coming. And no matter how much I thought I was trying to fix a problem, but the only thing that we can truly control is ourselves and how we show up. So when we think, are we thinking and producing clarity? That's the first step in what I call the mentally strong method. The second step is organizing, right? Can you organize the things that are going on in your head? If there's any mothers out there, any parents out there that are struggling with the decisions or what's going on with their children, and you're like, well, if I just do this, this will change. It may change. I do want you to continue trying to solve problems, right? But when I say organize, I'm also talking about the emotional, intimate piece that gets into our thought process, takes our energy, decreases our capacity, right? So you could imagine I'm there, I'm afraid, right? I have a lot of anxiety about, what if my son dies? I have enormous stress about like, am I smart enough to find the right doctors to that will actually help him and heal him? So let's stop there. Like, I actually had these thoughts like, am I smart enough to do this? And I remember watching a movie, can't remember the name of the movie, but this father was on a mission to find a cure for his daughter's illness. And of course, it's the movies. He was successful. She was healed. And I thought, if I had enough grit and resilience and smartness, I will be able to do that. But when I think about that, I get a lot of negative thoughts. I'm not that smart. And so that, kind of takes away some of your energy, the overwhelming, what is God doing? Like, the world is just beating me up. I deserve this. Like, there's all these things that are going on in your mind that are taking away energy, decreasing clarity, right? And so when I say, can you organize your problems? I'm saying, can you be honest of what is grief? What is trauma? What is your negative self-talk that you need to stop doing? What is anxiety? Is there a spiritual conflict there? How are you dealing with injustices? And in the mentally strong method, we have all of these things in separate categories so that we know that we are working through think our thinking produces clarity, our organization increases capacity, right? Because if you can take away some of those things that are wasting your energy, you're actually giving yourself present energy for that capacity that we're talking about. And then when we choose, we have confidence in that choice. When we're in survival mode and we're just choosing like randomly and grabbing at things, like it's just the grit. And again, this video is all about mentally strong people do have grit, but that is not all they have. True mental strength comes from an internal insight, a control of the nervous system, and the ability to increase capacity, handle whatever comes your way. Can you do that with confidence? When I work with someone, they learn the mentally strong method, they learn how to think, organize, make choices in line with what they want, they know where they're going. And so they leave my programs with clarity, an increase in capacity, and that confidence to say, I am mentally strong. So, would love to work with you. Click the link in the description and let's learn the mentally strong method.